They say life begins at 60. But for Amanda, it was only the beginning of her true story. A life spent in service to others, a marriage built on promises now shattered, and a heart left to heal after years of sacrifice. What do you do when the life you've known turns upside down in the blink of an eye? When the very person you loved the most betrays you in the harshest way possible? In this story, Amanda doesn't just take back what was stolen from her. She rebuilds herself into someone stronger than she ever imagined. This is a journey of revenge, of reclaiming what's hers, and ultimately, of finding the kind of love that doesn't hurt. It all started with an invitation, a simple request to attend a wedding. But it wasn't just any wedding. It was the wedding of her husband, to a woman half her age. It was the moment Amanda realized everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and happiness was about to be turned upside down. But what she did next, well, it would change the course of her life, and hers alone. Amanda sat quietly in her small, modest living room, her fingers gently tracing the edges of a photograph that had seen better days. It was of her and Harold, back when things were different, back when they had dreams, plans, and a future together. Now, all of that was gone, lost to the whispers of betrayal. You see, for 35 years, Amanda had given everything to her marriage. She had been a caretaker, a partner, a mother. She had been there for Harold through thick and thin, even when he lost his job, even when the spark in his eyes started to fade, and especially when he lost his vision in that terrible accident. Amanda had stayed. She had nursed him back to health, silently loving him in ways only she knew how. But what had she gotten in return? An invitation. An invitation to watch the man she had given her heart to marry someone else. The woman who had walked into their lives with a smile and a promise. The same woman who had once looked down on Amanda, who had never seen her as anything more than a shadow in the background. Amanda had spent years learning how to love someone else's dream. And now she was left alone, picking up the pieces of her broken heart. But Amanda wasn't just anyone. She was strong, resilient, and perhaps for the first time, ready to live for herself. So what did she do when she got that invitation? Did she crumble? Did she give in to the weight of the past? No. Amanda made a decision, one that would change everything. The story of her revenge wasn't just about getting back at Harold. It was about reclaiming herself, her worth, and her future. And as you'll soon see, this story isn't just a tale of hurt and betrayal. It's a story of courage, of stepping into the unknown, and of finding peace in the most unexpected of places. Amanda's life wasn't filled with grand gestures or extravagant moments. It was, in many ways, quiet and unremarkable, a simple existence rooted in the everyday rhythms of family, work, and home. She grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's business, where days were long and nights were filled with the soft hum of crickets and distant conversations. It was a town that time seemed to forget, nestled in a corner of the world where nothing ever seemed to change. And for Amanda that was enough. Or so she thought. From a young age, she was taught the value of hard work and sacrifice. Her family didn't have much. Money was tight and luxuries were few. Yet there was always enough love to go around. Amanda was the middle child, the one who quietly observed, who didn't seek attention but was always there when someone needed her. Her siblings, both older and younger, had their own dreams, their own paths. But Amanda, she found her purpose in others. Helping, supporting, and caring for those around her came naturally. Growing up, Amanda had learned that life wasn't about what you had but what you gave. And so, she gave freely, of her time, her energy, and most of all, her heart. She married young, as was common in her small town, and soon found herself taking care of a home, a husband, and eventually children. It wasn't the grand life of fame or fortune she had imagined as a young girl, but it was a life she could be proud of. At least, that's what she told herself. But there was a quiet yearning inside her, one that Amanda had learned to suppress over the years. It wasn't the desire for wealth or fame. It was something much simpler. She wanted to be seen, not just as the caretaker, not just as the woman behind the scenes, but as someone who mattered. But, in the bustle of everyday life, she rarely had the chance to consider that. Years passed, and Amanda's world grew smaller in many ways. The children grew up, her husband's business was always in need of her support, and she kept giving. Giving until there was nothing left of the woman she had once been. She smiled, she laughed, but deep down a part of her longed for something more, something just for her. And then the phone rang. A simple call that would set everything in motion. It was an invitation to a wedding. But it wasn't just any wedding. It was his wedding. The man she had spent decades loving, the man who had once been her entire world, was marrying someone else. Someone younger. Someone who wasn't her. It was a regular Tuesday morning when Amanda's world began to crumble. She had just finished her breakfast, 2 pieces of toast with a thin layer of jam, and was wiping down the kitchen counters when the phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but something inside her told her to pick it up. "Hello," she said, her voice steady, though the day felt off from the very start. The voice on the other end was familiar, but the words that followed were anything but. It was her husband, Thomas. But what he said shattered her quiet morning, her quiet life. "Amanda, I need to tell you something," he started, his tone unusually hesitant. "I'm getting married again." The words hung in the air, as though they were suspended in time. For a moment, Amanda thought she had misheard him. She set down the dish towel, her hands trembling slightly. "Married?" she echoed, the shock in her voice palpable. But we've been through so much, Amanda," Thomas interrupted, his voice soft but firm. "I met someone and it's time for me to move on." Amanda's heart pounded in her chest. Move on. She had been there for him through thick and thin, raising their children, supporting his career, standing by him when times were tough. And now, just like that, he was telling her that their life together didn't mean enough to hold on to. He had found someone else. "Who is she?" Amanda asked, her voice barely a whisper, as though the words could shatter her completely. There was a pause, and then his voice cracked a little. "Her name is Lucy. She's younger. She's what I need now." Lucy. The name echoed in Amanda's mind, a bitter taste rising in her throat. For all the years of loyalty and love she had poured into their marriage, it all felt so worthless now. Thomas was leaving her, not just for another woman, but for someone who, by all appearances, had everything Amanda didn't: youth, beauty, and the promise of a future he wanted to build. Tears welled up in Amanda's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. This was it. The truth she had been too afraid to face was now staring her in the face. She had been replaced, discarded like an old book that no longer had a place on the shelf. For a long time, Amanda had sensed the distance growing between them, the coolness in Thomas's eyes, the late nights at work that were never quite explained. But she had refused to see it. She had told herself that this was just a phase, that things would get better. But this was the end. A final blow. She hung up the phone, her hands shaking as she placed it back in its cradle. For a few moments, Amanda stood there in silence, absorbing the weight of it all. Then, she did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. It wasn't just the pain of losing Thomas that hurt. It was the loss of all the years she had given, the dreams that she had put on hold, the life she had quietly and uncomplainingly built for others. It all seemed so empty now. Amanda wasn't just grieving the loss of her marriage. She was grieving the loss of herself, the woman she had forgotten to be. After hearing the words from Thomas, Amanda sat there in silence, her heart torn between disbelief and the crushing weight of betrayal. But as the reality of the situation settled in, a spark lit within her. It wasn't the spark of revenge, not at first, but a realization. She was done with being invisible. Done with being the woman who was always there for everyone but never truly seen. For the first time in years, Amanda thought about herself, not as Thomas's wife, not as the mother of his children, but as Amanda. And in that moment, a quiet, unwavering determination began to grow inside her. She wouldn't just let this betrayal define her. No. She would rise above it, and make sure Thomas knew that he hadn't just lost his wife, but the woman who had stood by him through it all. Amanda wasn't a vengeful person by nature. She had always believed in forgiveness, in letting go, in moving forward. But now she realized that this wasn't just about forgiving. This was about making sure that her years of love, her loyalty, and her sacrifice weren't forgotten. She wouldn't just fade away in the shadows of his life, pretending it didn't matter. It was time for Thomas to face the consequences of his actions. Plan. Amanda started small at first. She knew that the key to her plan was subtlety. It wasn't about grand gestures or making a scene. It was about making sure Thomas saw what he had lost. And it started with one simple idea: a wedding. The thought of Thomas and Lucy getting married weighed heavily on Amanda's heart. But instead of spiraling into despair, Amanda did something she had never done before. She took control. She knew she couldn't undo the past, but she could carve out a future where she no longer had to accept the role of the betrayed wife. She would show Thomas the life he could have had with her, the strength he had underestimated, and the woman he had dismissed as nothing more than a caretaker. Amanda's first step was to secure her own happiness. She didn't just want to walk away quietly. She wanted to be someone Thomas would regret leaving. She worked on herself, mentally, physically, and emotionally. She reconnected with old friends, took up hobbies she had long abandoned, and began making plans for her future, independent of anyone else's expectations. But the real turning point came when Amanda, with newfound confidence, made a bold decision. She would attend Thomas's wedding. But she wouldn't just attend as a guest, she would attend as someone. A move that would change everything. Amanda had always been the quiet, supporting figure in her marriage. She had always stood in the background, doing what needed to be done. But this time she would stand in the spotlight. She would walk into the wedding with her head held high, not as a woman who had been discarded, but as a woman who had chosen to rise from the ashes of betrayal and reclaim her worth. She would attend Thomas's wedding, not to stop it, not to confront him, but to make a statement, to show him and everyone in that room that she was not just the woman he left behind. She was so much more than that. And if he didn't see it now, he would one day regret the fact that he hadn't. Amanda knew that revenge wasn't about rushing in with anger and chaos. It was about precision. It was about making sure Thomas understood the consequences of his actions, step by step. So she began laying the groundwork for her plan, not in a flurry of emotion, but with the calm, calculated mindset of someone who had spent years being underestimated. She started with the basics. Observation. Amanda knew that to truly make Thomas feel the impact of her absence, she had to understand the life he was building without her. She wasn't going to walk into his world blindly, like a hurricane, causing havoc and leaving only destruction in her wake. No, Amanda was smarter than that. She needed to see it all. His new life, his new relationship, and most importantly, how deeply she had been erased from his world. She began watching Thomas from afar, not out of obsession, but out of necessity. She paid attention to his daily habits, his routines, and the people he surrounded himself with. Every morning, Amanda would walk to the nearby park, where she could watch Thomas leave his office building. She made mental notes of how he interacted with his colleagues, how his body language had shifted since the beginning of their marriage. He seemed more carefree, more self-assured, completely different from the man she had once known. And then there was Lucy. Amanda didn't rush to judge her, but she made sure to understand who she was becoming in Thomas's life. She knew it wasn't enough to just find out about Lucy through the grapevine. She needed to get closer to see what made Lucy tick. So Amanda did what she had always done best. She learned. She attended a few local events, posed as someone who simply enjoyed meeting new people, and watched Lucy from a distance. Amanda noticed the little things. The way Lucy always tried to one-up the people around her. The way she smiled just a little too brightly when talking about her perfect life with Thomas. But Amanda wasn't there to cause a scene. She was there to gather information, to understand what made Lucy so confident in her new role. Lucy wasn't the problem, Amanda realized. It was Thomas. Lucy was just a catalyst, a convenient way for him to escape from the life he had built with Amanda. But now, it was Amanda's turn to take control. The first real move in Amanda's plan came one evening when she casually ran into one of Thomas's old friends, Carl. They had always shared friendly conversations during family gatherings, but Amanda hadn't seen him in months. "Carl, it's so good to see you," she said with a warm smile. Her voice tinged with just the right amount of casualness. "How have you been?" Carl, who was always the kind of man to speak his mind, leaned in with a wink. "You know, I've been keeping busy. But speaking of busy, I've seen Thomas around lately with Lucy. Looks like he's really moving on, huh?" "He's been a lot more carefree, I'd say." Amanda fought the tightness in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. "Oh really?" she asked, her voice soft. "I hadn't heard much. But I guess that's good for him, right?" Carl, clearly eager to fill in the blanks, went on. "Well, I'm sure he's happier now, you know? You never really did get him, Amanda. He's got everything with Lucy. He's just in a better place now. It's like he's finally free." Amanda nodded slowly, taking in the information, pretending it didn't pierce her heart. She knew exactly what he was trying to say, that somehow she had been the one holding him back. But she wasn't angry anymore. She was focused. As Amanda moved forward with her plan, carefully calculating each step, something unexpected began to happen. The more she focused on her revenge, the more she found herself rediscovering pieces of herself she had long since forgotten. For years, Amanda had lived her life through the lens of others, first through her children, then through her husband. She had put her own dreams and desires on the back burner, believing that her worth was tied to her ability to care for and support those around her. But now, in the quiet moments of her day, Amanda was beginning to realize something profound. She had neglected herself for so long. She had forgotten what it felt like to pursue her own happiness. For the first time in years, she felt a stirring deep within her, a desire to explore, to grow, and to reclaim her own life, independent of anyone else's expectations. Amanda had always loved painting, but it was a hobby she had set aside when life got busy. The paints, the brushes, the blank canvases, everything had been packed away in a closet, gathering dust for over a decade. One morning, as she sat in her small but cozy living room, she stared at the old easel in the corner of the room. It seemed to call to her. Without overthinking it, she stood up and pulled out the supplies. The first stroke of the brush was hesitant, unsure, as if the act itself was foreign to her. But with each passing minute, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. The act of painting wasn't just about creating something beautiful. It was about reconnecting with the person she had once been, before life's demands had pulled her away from herself. It was about rediscovering the joy that had once come so naturally. And slowly, Amanda began to realize how much she had lost in the pursuit of making everyone else happy. In addition to painting, Amanda started to do other things she had long abandoned. She began reading novels she had always meant to pick up, taking long walks in the park, and spending time with old friends she hadn't seen in years. She rediscovered her love for gardening, something she had done with her mother as a child. Slowly, the pieces of herself that had been buried beneath years of self-sacrifice started to resurface. As she took the time to reconnect with her passions, Amanda's confidence grew. She wasn't just doing things for the sake of keeping busy. She was investing in herself. And for the first time in years, she felt alive, not as someone's wife or someone's mother, but as Amanda, the woman she had lost touch with, but never truly forgotten. If you're feeling moved by Amanda's story so far, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced betrayal, or maybe found the strength to start over after everything seemed lost? What do you think of Amanda's decision to reclaim her life and find her own happiness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback means the world to us. And if you're enjoying the journey so far, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire and empower. Let's keep the conversation going. The day Amanda had been quietly preparing for had finally arrived. She had worked diligently, not just on her plan for revenge, but on herself. The quiet moments of reflection and the rebuilding of her confidence had all led to this crucial point. It was time to face the man who had once been her world and the woman who had taken him from her. Amanda's decision wasn't made in haste. It had been carefully thought out, calculated. She wasn't going to barge into their lives with anger or bitterness. No, she was going to confront them with the calm assurance that only someone who had reclaimed their own life could possess. She had spent enough time in the shadows, enough time wondering if she was good enough. Now, she would show Thomas and Lucy that she didn't need them to feel whole. The confrontation took place at a local cafe, a place that held memories of better times. Amanda knew that choosing this spot was symbolic. It was where she and Thomas had shared many quiet moments together, over simple cups of coffee, where they had once whispered their hopes and dreams. Now, it would be the setting of an entirely different conversation. Amanda arrived first. She sat at a table by the window, her back straight, her gaze calm and steady. As she waited, her thoughts were clear. She wasn't here to beg for his attention or to plead for his love. She was here to reclaim her dignity, to remind him of who she had been in his life, and to prove to herself that she didn't need him to find happiness. She had been strong before, and she would be strong again. When Thomas and Lucy arrived, they looked so different from the couple they once were in her mind. Thomas, once the man she had adored, now seemed smaller, weaker. Lucy, ever confident and polished, carried herself with an air of superiority, as though everything she had done, everything she had taken was justified. But Amanda didn't flinch. She remained poised, her heart steady in her chest. "Good to see you, Thomas," Amanda said softly, her voice unwavering. "Lucy," she nodded, her eyes meeting the woman's without hesitation. Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes darting between Amanda and Lucy. "Amanda, I know, Thomas," Amanda interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "You don't need to explain. I know exactly what you've done and I know why you did it. But I'm not here to rehash the past. I'm here to tell you that I'm fine. In fact, I'm better than fine." Lucy raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. She was used to seeing Amanda as a submissive, quiet woman, someone who would take whatever was given to her. But that woman was gone now, replaced by someone who had learned how to stand tall, no matter the circumstances. Amanda continued, her gaze now fixed on Thomas. "You see, Thomas, I spent years supporting you, believing in us, hoping that one day we'd get back to the way things were. But what I realized is that I was holding on to a version of you that no longer exists. And I don't need you to validate my worth. I've learned to validate it myself." Thomas looked away, clearly uncomfortable, but Amanda could see the flicker of regret in his eyes. It was too late, though. He had made his choice. And now Amanda was making hers. "I don't need your apology," Amanda said, her voice steady. "What I need is to show you that I am enough. My own. And while I may not have the life you thought I would, I have something far more valuable. Freedom. Freedom from the lies, from the betrayal, from the sadness you left me with." Lucy, unable to remain silent any longer, scoffed. "You're wasting your time, Amanda. Thomas is with me now. He chose me." Amanda turned to her, meeting her gaze with quiet confidence. "Yes, Lucy, he chose you. But he didn't choose me. And that's exactly why I'm here. To show him that I don't need him. I never did." Just when Amanda thought her life had finally settled into a rhythm of peace and independence, fate had other plans. After the confrontation with Thomas and Lucy, she felt a strange sense of closure. She had stood tall, spoken her truth, and walked away without looking back. But the truth was, Amanda had no idea where her life would go from there. The path ahead seemed uncertain, and though she was stronger than before, there was a lingering sense of loneliness, a desire for something more. Amanda threw herself into her newfound passions, painting, gardening, reading, but something was missing. She couldn't deny the quiet moments in the evening when the house felt too still, when she longed for someone to share her life with, someone who would understand her, appreciate her, and see her for who she truly was. It wasn't that she was desperately searching for love. It was simply that she had learned to value herself enough to know that love, real love, should come from someone who truly valued her, not just for what she had given, but for who she was. One afternoon, while working in the garden, Amanda met someone new. She hadn't expected it, hadn't even been thinking about meeting anyone at all. But there he was, a man in his early 40s, walking past her house with a friendly smile. He was tall, with dark brown hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to catch the sunlight just right. He looked approachable, down to earth, and most importantly, he didn't have the arrogance Amanda had seen so many times before. "Excuse me," he called out, pausing as Amanda worked in her flower bed. "I've been meaning to introduce myself. I'm Jacob. I live a few houses down. I couldn't help but notice your garden. It's beautiful." Amanda looked up, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you. I've spent a lot of time working on it." Jacob smiled and stepped closer, crouching down next to her flower bed to take a closer look at the petals. "Well, it definitely shows. I'm not much of a gardener myself, but I admire people who know how to bring life into their surroundings." There was something different about Jacob. He wasn't trying to impress her, wasn't offering her empty compliments. He was simply interested in the work she had done, in the person she had become. They talked about plants, about the weather, about life. Nothing extraordinary, but everything felt real. Over the next few weeks, they ran into each other often. Jacob would stop by when he was out for a run, or when he needed advice on the best way to tend to his own small garden. He didn't rush things or push her into conversations she wasn't ready for. He simply allowed Amanda to open up at her own pace, and she did, more than she had with anyone in a long time. One evening, Jacob invited Amanda to dinner at a local restaurant. She hesitated at first. Dating was the furthest thing from her mind. But there was something about his gentle persistence that felt different from everything she had known before. He wasn't just interested in who she had been, but in who she was now, in this new version of herself. It was refreshing, and more than that, it was healing. Over dinner, Jacob didn't ask about her past with Thomas, or about the heartbreak she had endured. Instead, he listened when she spoke about the things that brought her joy. Her art, her flowers, her new sense of independence. And in that moment, Amanda realized something profound. Jacob didn't just accept her. He appreciated the strength it had taken for her to become who she was. He respected the choices she had made, the woman she had fought to become. For the first time in a long while, Amanda felt seen, not as someone's wife or someone's caretaker, but as Amanda, a woman with her own dreams, her own passions, and her own worth. Amanda's wedding day arrived, and it was nothing like she had ever imagined. It was bright, filled with the smell of fresh flowers and the soft murmur of excited guests. But unlike most brides, Amanda wasn't nervous. She wasn't focused on what others would think of her or the details of the day. No, she was focused on something far more important: herself. This was her moment, her statement, and it was about more than just the man waiting for her at the altar. It was about reclaiming the life she had nearly lost. The decision to hold her wedding on the same day that Thomas had chosen for his was not made lightly. It wasn't done out of petty revenge or spite. It wasn't about causing a scene or trying to steal the spotlight. For Amanda, this wedding was about control. It was about reclaiming her narrative, about showing everyone, including herself, that she was not defined by her past, not defined by Thomas's decisions. She was defining her own future. Amanda had spent the last few months planning the details of the day, not just with Jacob, but with herself. Every decision, from the delicate lace of her gown to the simple yet elegant venue by the lake, was made with intention. She chose a place that felt peaceful, where the sun would set behind them, and the sky would be painted in hues of orange and pink. A perfect symbol of the life she was beginning, a life that was hers to shape, unburdened by the weight of betrayal. When the day finally came, Amanda stood in front of the mirror, looking at the woman she had become. She wasn't the same woman who had stood in front of Thomas all those years ago, uncertain of her worth. She wasn't the same woman who had accepted less than she deserved. No, this Amanda was different. This Amanda was strong, confident, and ready to step into her new life without looking back. As the ceremony began, Amanda could feel the eyes of the guests on her, but she didn't flinch. She walked down the aisle with grace, her heart steady, her hands calm. She was not walking toward a man to make her whole. She was walking toward a new chapter of her life, one that she had chosen for herself. Jacob stood at the altar waiting for her. He was everything she hadn't expected, but everything she needed. He saw her, not just the woman she had been, not just the woman she had become through her struggles, but the woman she was becoming in this very moment. With him, Amanda felt truly seen and valued. And with that, she was ready to give herself to him, not as a way to make up for past mistakes, but as a way to build a future filled with respect, love, and understanding. The vows were simple but profound. As Amanda spoke the words, "I choose you not to complete me, but to walk beside me," she realized that this was not just a union with Jacob. It was a union with herself, a commitment to never again lose herself for the sake of someone else. She had chosen her own happiness, her own worth. And with Jacob by her side, she knew that she would continue to grow, to thrive, and to love, not because she needed anyone else to give her validation, but because she had learned to validate herself. Amanda sat on the porch of her new home, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The world around her had settled into a quiet calm, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she could hear her own thoughts without the weight of past regrets hanging over her. She had walked a long road, one that had been paved with heartbreak, self-doubt, and betrayal, but now she stood on the other side of it, stronger and more resilient than she had ever been. It was a journey she hadn't expected to take. When her marriage to Thomas fell apart, she thought her life was over. She felt as though the rug had been pulled out from under her, and for a long time, she had to learn how to stand again. But what Amanda had discovered was that this wasn't an end. It was a new beginning. The pain of her past was still there, but it no longer had a hold over her. She had learned how to let it go and move forward, not because it was easy, but because she had no other choice. In the months since her wedding to Jacob, Amanda had grown in ways she hadn't imagined possible. She had faced her fears, her failures, and her insecurities, and in doing so, she had found a version of herself she had long forgotten. She was no longer the woman who had defined herself through her marriage or through the people she cared for. Amanda had learned to define herself, not by anyone else's expectations, but by her own. The relationship with Jacob was everything she had hoped for, not because he completed her, but because he accepted her exactly as she was. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on mutual respect, understanding, and a shared desire to build a future together. And while Amanda was grateful for his love, she understood something crucial. Her happiness didn't depend on him or anyone else. Her happiness was something she had built within herself. Amanda had learned the hard way that true love starts with loving yourself. She had spent so many years seeking validation from others, trying to fill the empty spaces in her heart with external sources of approval. But now, she understood that the love she had been searching for had always been within her. She had to first love herself before she could fully love someone else. And that, Amanda realized, was the greatest lesson of all. As Amanda stood at the threshold of her new life, she couldn't help but smile. The journey she had taken had been long, filled with moments of pain, self-doubt, and even fear. But now, as she looked ahead, she saw only possibilities. The future, once so uncertain, now felt full of promise. The lessons Amanda had learned along the way were ones that would stay with her forever. She had learned that no matter how broken we feel in the moment, we are always capable of healing. She had discovered that the end of one chapter doesn't mean the end of the story. It's simply the beginning of something new, something better, something completely in our control. Amanda had spent years caring for others, trying to make everyone around her happy. But in the end, she realized that the most important thing she could do was care for herself. In learning to love herself, she had unlocked the strength to move on from her past and embrace the future with open arms. She had built a life that was entirely her own, a life not defined by the choices of others, but by her own decisions. And as she stood on the doorstep of her future, she knew one thing for certain. She was ready. Amanda's story doesn't end here. It's a story that will continue to unfold with each new day, each new decision, and each new chapter she chooses to write. But for now, as she takes a deep breath and steps forward, she knows that her journey is far from over. It's only just begun. Thank you so much for joining us today and listening to Amanda's incredible journey. It's a story of resilience, of reclaiming one's power, and of never giving up on finding happiness, no matter the obstacles. The lesson here is clear. No matter how many times life knocks you down, you always have the strength to rise again, stronger than before. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. How did it resonate with you? What lessons have you taken away from Amanda's journey? Share your feelings in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that will keep you coming back for more. Thank you for being a part of this journey.